So today we're basically going through a post-construction evaluation of how the build went, whether your desires that you wanted from the building have been achieved, what you think might have been improved. So let's start with that. What did you want to achieve with the build in the first instance, Ben?
Well, so it was we were going up into the roof and building a whole new roof and building effectively a whole new floor. We wanted to do that and incorporate as much sustainable tech as we possibly could, having already had rainwater system and things like that in the house. And we also wanted to be really nice, so we wanted to kind of do as best job we can, fitting this stuff in and making it so it was hidden away. So you didn't really think, oh, look at all these compromises that have had to happen because we've got all this stuff in here. Going through the separate little bits, I personally hate the fans you get in bathrooms, so I always had it in mind, even though you didn't know at the start, to put in a whole house system, and that escalated into an MVHR, which we fitted. I also wanted to kind of improve on any walls that we could improve on, because we'd noticed some bits of the house were colder than others, because it's the main body of the house is 1920s. We built a bit in 2009, and this was going to be the most modern bit. I also wanted to add to the rainwater system we had. We already had a rainwater system for flushing the toilets, but that was starting to feel like a waste of lovely rainwater. So I wanted to kind of improve on that. And yeah, just do everything. Get as much insulation as we possibly could into the place while still making it lovely, like a beautiful extension. And that's what we wanted to achieve.
So that's when we started sitting down with the plans that the architects had put together already, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And look at what they'd specified in terms of building regs to achieve, to make sure we hit the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And then it started expanding through our discussions of what we could add into that and how we'd work through it. So how have we gone about doing all of these things? What have we actually installed in the building?
So we have, I've already mentioned it, you've got the MVHR system, which is taking heat from the utility room and the bathrooms and redistributing that heat around the house. And that seems to work really well.
We have got a little bit of a problem with that at the moment, though, haven't we? In that we are still waiting for them to come commission it. So
building control required a commissioning report on that, commissioning certificate, to make sure it was properly installed. I mean, we're both pretty sure it is, but I suppose it's a good thing to check that someone's not just thrown it in there and it's not doing what it says on the tin.
Absolutely. But again, it's one of these things that will come across from start to finish of a project where at the early stages we were never told it would need a commissioning certificate, and then right at the end when we come to the final sign-off, it's then requested by building control. So, in all these projects you may find these little hurdles as you go along. We
also were still waiting for a grey water certificate, aren't we? Because the company who built that, I found out more about them. They basically do these massive saltwater processing things out in Saudi Arabia and stuff like that. And over here, it's pretty much the first system they've made. So when they were asked for a certificate, they were like, "Oh, what does that need to say?" But they're on it now, and this is just part of the teething problems. If we weren't on it and pushing it forwards, then we wouldn't have got to the point where we had this thing in there and we're saying, right, now we need a certificate for it. So that will be forthcoming, and then that hurdle will be achieved as well, ideally.
And again, it's part and parcel of the regulatory framework. Ultimately, when things are quite new, people like building control get a bit concerned that they've got a piece of paper, making sure that everything's safe and potable and usable in the right way.
But it's vital. Just so everyone, it's just like a handshake for everybody, so they know that it's all working and it's all good, and no one's pulling the wool over anyone's eyes.
Absolutely.
On it. But
absolutely, So one of the key things I think though was also the insulation levels in the building, wasn't it?
We bought the house as it was described as a cavity wall, which I've discovered as part of my investigations into domestic energy assessing. It's not as great as I thought. It was sold as cold, and I always wondered why the living room was cold. And it turns out because it's a thin cavity, and it's on an exposed wall where it shouldn't be anyway. The wall was damp, and it was cold. And so when you came along, we had this discussion, and that was one of the walls we decided to expand the insulation on. And we haven't obviously stuck any thermometers up and taken any long range readings, but it's now a much warmer, drier room, and we're much happy with it. And that's a very successful retrofit, to my mind.
Absolutely, and it's very much one of the rooms that you and the family hang out in as well, isn't it,
Yes.
for the TV room?
So it not being
works.
cold is a good thing.
It's very much so, very much so.
Yeah.
So the other things that we've installed here have been the solar PV that was removed and then replaced.
Yes.
We've had the solar thermal system removed and then replaced.
Yeah.
We've had obviously the super insulated roof. We've done the internal wall insulation where we can. We've upgraded, windows in the top floor are all now triple glazed.
Yes.
We've got the green roof, which has your personal patented watering system to go with it as well.
I mean, this is the thing, because we discovered whilst doing this in discussion with the green roof person that indigenous Sussex blend of plants would no longer live through the periods of drought that we're now getting due to climate change. So we've put a rainwater system up there, and that was a kind of a sticking point actually, because we're pushing the envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Rainwater system, dig a hole in the garden.
We talked it through as well, and we came up with a plan.
Yeah.
That had to be adjusted a couple of times, but again, that's kind of the whole process of the working with a client and a retrofit coordinator is to get the solution that you need at the end by working out where you want to be and what the problems are involved in getting there.
Well, that's one of the things, isn't it? Because I remember a lot of conversations between us, a lot about ceiling heights actually, because once I guess it was a slight sprung surprise, the MVHR knew, we're going like, how am I going to get all these tubes around and into the ceiling?
Yep.
And then we had to fiddle around with ceiling heights, and I think we've done a really great job of doing that. But if it hadn't been us on site, the insulation was the same again. We told the architect something, but that's very dry information.
Yeah.
So if it hadn't been us two talking on site, I guess me in kind of like almost a kind of a retrofitting sort of thinking role, whatever that is, these things would have been more tricky, wouldn't they?
Absolutely, and look, we're working as well with the various contractors on the job. So not only the guys that are fitting the insulation, but we've also got to look at how we're ventilating that flat piece of the roof.
Yeah.
How we're not making too many holes in that insulation for
Yes.
things like the back boxes of lights.
Yes.
How we get the wiring in for those lights. How the electrician's going to get the connections for the data points and make sure that there are positions for things to hang on properly.
Yeah.
That we need to fit things like the projector. Needed particular fixing points that we needed to think about quite early on. All of these aspects you need to kind of consider the whole to understand where you're going to end up, because obviously we'd have had to start making holes in things otherwise, and it would have been a much harder thing later on to put right.
Well, I'm really glad that we were able to have a conversation about the lights and change what I had, because had I bought them, we'd have made a massive hole in the insulation, and that would have been, just killed the whole point of doing it in the first place. Kind of like, let's put all this insulation in and make a massive hole in it to put a light in, which we didn't end up doing.
It would have been very frustrating. Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess a success for me is the fact that it is a 1920s house. Yeah. It is old. It's got suspended floors. It's kind of not the greatest, but we have managed to raise it from a D to a B, which I'm extremely happy with. Based on what we were starting with, really.
Absolutely.
In terms of the energy assessment.
Absolutely. So, we've talked about what we've done. We've talked about what we've installed and some of the issues that we've got. What do you think? Were there any things that particularly went wrong or that were hard in this process?
I've mentioned the outside plumbing. That's more of a kind of processing issue. The grey water was hard for me because it was unknown, and I was persuading everyone, and I was providing the almost driving force for that. I mean, not with with the plumbers.
Absolutely,
so that was hard, driving a new technology through. As exemplified by the fact we've now got version 2 of the tank, right? So we had to go through that whole process, which even
to the point of having to rehang the door.
Yes, even had to rehang the door. I mean, I'm not sure if everyone would have gone through that. I can't think of anything that actually went wrong.
So I think, well, that's great to hear.
Yeah.
It's great to hear.
Yeah.
I think part of the beauty of this, I think, is really key is the communication that you and I have had through the process as well. We keep you informed of what we're about to do.
Yeah.
You point out where things that we may not already know that you are planning on doing, so we can incorporate them into the plans early on. Yeah. But it's always been the thing, hasn't it? From the early outset, you and I keeping close communication of what's going on,
Yeah.
what's happening next, why we're doing these certain things, so that we can think it through together. And I mean, and your enthusiasm and knowledge for it as well has been a driving force in all of this.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it would have worked if I'd have been less interested and less willing to look it up. Because I mean, obviously, I sat through lockdown doing a lot of research up to the point where we met you and employed you to do this, and it was your pedigree in the green technology that means that we are where we are. So there's a lot to be said for that, isn't there? Discussion, finding the right people to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, but again, I think the key thing here has been our communication throughout the process, hasn't it? I think is fair to say.
Yeah.
So, is there anything that you would have changed and maybe done differently if, in retrospect?
Whoa.
Shall I leave now?
Let me have a think. Anything I would have changed? It's not really to do with the house and the plan, because I think the house plan was really tight. I think I would have let you control the plumbers, but maybe that's not something that's kind of relevant for this discussion here. I think because I've spent a long time training up these plumbers to understand our house. Because it's got the rainwater thing in it already, because it had all these different things in it, and I did different ideas. I thought I was training this plumbing company up to do it, and I thought, we were quite. This is communication going. I suppose in terms of what you're saying about communication, this is communication going wrong. I employed them on the basis that they knew what was going on, and we trained them up, and that was all good. But in the end, they sent someone.
They'd never been here before.
Someone who'd never been here before, and then it didn't quite work.
And who wasn't really that interested in doing the kind of stuff that was a bit different.
So it means that you need to have people who are on board and into it and understand the technology, to make sure it works. Because I mean, Nick understood the MVHR. We understood all the other things that went into it. It was just that caused the problem, really. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, you understand like the installation like the back of your hand, so you're able to advise that can happen, this can't happen, and to the point of us insulating the cupboards upstairs to make sure the interface between the old house and the new house works and is as insulated both sides. And we've even gone back to that and improved it again, because we found gaps and stuff like that. But that's all again part of the communication.
It's an iterative process, isn't it?
It is.
Basically, just to improve it once we've seen any problems, and then try and resolve them and just get them done, so we get the best result all round.
It is true.